So, Yasmin, welcome to Director's Notes.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. So, I first saw Jellyfish and Lobster because our editor, Marbell, programmed it for Aesthetica.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it was really cool to see it there at the festival. So yeah, tell us a bit about the film.
Um, so it's a magical realist dark comedy set in a British care home um about two elderly residents, both coming to terms with the sort of inevitability of the end of life. And they make a magical discovery that reinvigorates their sense of youth.
It's that's bang on.
Yeah, okay. Okay, got it.
I mean, as we sort of sadly know, we do live in quite an ageist society.
Yeah,
And that was one of the things that really struck me with the film. So not only have you got two older protagonists, but they're quite kinky, which I really enjoy. So where
yeah.
where was the motivation from to set it with those kind of sort of aged people?
Well, like it came from this idea of um because I'd lost sort of two very close people to cancer. And one thing I realized was that they never really allowed themselves to be victimized by the disease. Because there's something about the second where your life is given a limitation, you start living in a way as you would if you didn't have a limitation, which is you lose kind of all sense of consequences to your actions. Because it's sort of like, what consequence could you possibly go through that's worse than what you're already going through? Like, what are you going to face that's worse than death?
Yeah.
Um, and then it was kind of like, well, actually, I don't think that's really specific to also to like an illness. I think that's also true to as you get older and as you age, you just like stop caring about what people think. And I think you really live your most authentic self when you're at that age. Um, and so it was just wanting to explore that, like what happens when the sort of bar for what is appropriate, inappropriate kind of goes out the window. What happens where when all the expectations that society has of you as an elderly person or as a sick person, you just throw that out the window. And then that was so fun to sit in and explore. Um, and it's so beautiful to see the reaction that that's gotten as well. Because I think it does speak to how a lot of people, particularly women, um, as we age, the sort of expectations and the ageist expectations that are placed on us. And so it was like, no, I think I'm gonna give Grace, I think she's gonna be hypersexual. I think she's gonna be um just very bold, and I think she's gonna, I just wanted her to be who she was. And yeah, I never judge my characters when I write them anyway. And so there was always a process of people going, oh, would she say that? Would she do that? Do we have to put that in? And there was always something at the back of my head that's like, it's not our job to judge our characters.
Love
Um,
that.
let them exist, let them be. And so for her to be embraced the way that she has been embraced, I love it. Yeah.
She's just unapologetic, which I
Just
think is great. And I mean, not to ruin it, 'cause not everyone will have seen it, but there's a scene where she takes a selfie. Uh,
Mhm.
it's just amazing. The first time I saw it, I was like, it's brilliant. And it's one of those that I've seen it again a couple of times now. And I just love that. And you don't see representation like that. So I
Yeah,
think it's really, really refreshing.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, that scene is one of my favorites.
It's just
Yeah, one of
brilliant because you're sort of going, no, she's not. And then you're like, yes, she is.
yes, she is. Yeah.
So obviously central, to the relationship, to the film is this relationship between our two characters. And I mean, they're just both brilliant. So you've got Flo Wilson and Syed Badreya. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So, talk to me about casting them and sort of, as you said, you writing these characters. Was it challenging to find the right people?
Um, yes and no. Like I thought it would be. Um, but then I like both of those, Flo and Syed, they as soon as I saw them, I was like, that's Grace. And as soon as I saw him, I was just like, that's me though. Um, I saw Flo in Help. Um, and I was just instantly like, she's incredible. And so Syed, I knew he was me though from his Instagram page. I I didn't at the time even know he was an actor. I went on like this rabbit hole of like looking through followers of Egyptian actors that were quite prominent and then seeing like see just my brain was like, oh, if you're an actor, then you're following another Egyptian actor because it's such a small, must be like such a small circle. Because that was one of the things that we had an incredible casting director called Charlotte Chapman, um, who was sort of did help with the casting on The Crown. And so she was telling me how difficult it was when they were going through their casting process to try and find Mohammed or Fayed, because she was
Yeah.
like, Egyptian male actors of that age range in the UK, just it's very difficult to find. Um,
Okay.
and so I went down this sort of dark rabbit hole on the internet and was like, okay, well, if you're an Egyptian actor, you'll be following other Egyptian actors. And then came across Syed's page, didn't know he was an actor, and was just like, just from his personality, the videos he posted, I was like, this guy is me though. But he was based in LA. Um, and so I thought, oh God, this is not going to happen. We don't have a budget to fly him over. So I reached out anyway. And then I sort of found out that he was an actor and he had been quite had been in quite a few prolific sort of Hollywood films. But he sort of said that he had always been kind of like typecasted as like the bad Arab or like the sort of the terrorist or the it was sort of like those same roles that he kept playing over and over again. Suddenly he was reading the script where he's having a wank in a laundry room. Um and he was just like, oh no, not to give it away, um, but he just felt like suddenly he was reading a script that was human and that felt human and that spoke to his human experiences outside of what people think of him as an Egyptian. Um, and so he flew from LA to London to do the script. And yeah, they both just had so much fun with it. And yeah, I mean they were just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. That story of him as well. That kind of speaks to the premise of the film as well. You know, it's these characters who aren't what you're expecting them to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is, like I said, it's just so refreshing to see.
I love that. Yeah.
So in the beginning, so talking about the film, you've got the elements of magic realism in there.
Mhm.
What is it about those elements that speaks to you as a filmmaker, and why did you want to include them in the story?
Um, I think I think at the beginning, I always thought that like to be taken seriously as a filmmaker and to tackle serious subject matters, you have to sort of make serious, sort of like hard hitting, straight dramas. And I'm not against those, I would still do one of those if the opportunity came. But for me personally, I think when it comes to those, firstly, like I like the idea of taking stories and subject matters that we've seen portrayed in a certain way before and subverting the way that they've been told. Um, and I think for me, if you're when you're tackling subject matters that are quite dark, like the idea of aging and illness and mortality, um, then you're sitting in the perspective of someone who is surviving or trying to survive. And for me, I think if you're truly sitting in the perspective of someone surviving, then you're also sitting in the perspective of someone with a need to escape reality. And so that's where the magical realism comes into it. And that honestly feels more truthful to me than if it was just like a straight sort of drama. So for me, because I'm always wanting to sit in the perspective of my character, um, it feels natural to me that I'm also then sitting in a perspective that kind of subverts from reality a bit in the way that I think a lot of us need to do when we're going through something sort of as heavy as that, if that makes any
Oh,
sense.
it does,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because, like you said, you've got the kind of Ken Loach style of really gritty, social realist exploring issues. But I'm a huge fan of magic realism. It's sort of, I got to know it initially watching Latin American cinema.
Yeah.
And you can talk about so much within that medium. And I think the balance that you've got in the film, is really beautiful.
Yeah, you can definitely access something even further with magical realism. Um, uh, Sort of it's Screen That Encounters, and one of the programmers wrote this review about it, and he worded it perfectly. Where I can't, I wish I had it up so I could say word for word. But he said he used the phrase "constraints of reality."
Okay.
Um, and that made perfect, that was just like, yeah, exactly. Because reality does constrain a story or a narrative or an emotion. And so it makes, I was just like, ah, yes. And
Got
it's
you.
that. I think magical realism allows you, and even comedy and humor and all these things that you don't associate with certain subject matters and with certain characters, actually allows you to access them even more.
Yeah.
Because you're not being restrained by reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talking about those scenes in the swimming pool, they are amazing. How did you film those? And so you got the different characters, you got different people,
Yeah.
but different roles.
We filmed, God, um, credit to my incredible DOP and her camera team. Um, but we basically filmed them in the lower end of a swimming pool. And so in that it was fairly, I don't want to use the word straightforward because and it wasn't me jumping in and out of the pool, it was the camera. Um, but yeah, I just had an incredible DOP who I just trusted. Kind of, we sort of like spoke through references and images, and then kind of just trusted for her to take the lead with it. Um, and yeah, we sort of had to break it up because Aslan, who plays the younger version of Mido, um, sort of was like, oh, I can't hold my breath for a certain amount of time. He struggled to sort of hold his breath for like a lengthy amount of time, and so we had to break it up into like 10-second we had to break the scene up into like 10-second intervals.
Yeah.
um and so yeah, we did. But I think the most important thing was that everyone was just having so much fun bringing this concept and bringing the characters to life.
Yeah.
And I will say that because we filmed peak summer and it was like 34 degrees outside, being in
It's
the
when we did have a summer.
being yeah, what we did when we had our brief summer, um being in a swimming pool came in handy.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah,
So you mentioned your DOP and sort of references. The film's obviously got this beautiful kind of dreamlike nostalgia feel to it.
yeah.
How did you get the color right? And yeah, what references did you pull from?
I think, well, we wanted to shoot on film, because we wanted that kind of grain and that texture. um and there was something that we kept speaking about these are characters who are running out of time, and we wondered how that would then translate by shooting the film on a medium that was also limited, because we had a limited amount of film stock, and how that would feed performance and how that the look of that as well would aid in the storytelling. um, and I think I think we achieved that. Like, and we were also specific with the locations that we picked in terms of color and how we wanted to we wanted it to be quite dark and dreary, but at the same time, there is an element of color and life that we wanted it to have. But then there's also Grace's costumes as well. And so we wanted her to be really vibrant on the backdrop of something that felt quite dark, sort of dreary. Um, and I think though all those elements kind of came together to create the palette that it has,
Yeah.
which I think in some ways for me feels quite eclectic, but I like that. Um, yeah.
No, and the eclecticness, and you talking about the backgrounds as well, that was something because the location, where the home is set, it doesn't have a clinical feel to it.
No,
Um, but you can tell obviously that it's not someone's home, it's not whatever. But I think you found that right balance in there.
yeah, we got very lucky. We found that's actually a care home that had been shut down many years ago. And the owners of it sort of let us in and let us use it. Um, and it like all of the doors still had the names of the residents
Oh,
that were in them, which was quite a
yeah.
quite
It's a bit spooky.
very, very spooky. And some of the wardrobes in the room still had like clothing and hats in it, and we were just like, oh God. Um, but thankfully, it was all good. Um, so yeah, it was an actual care home that had been closed quite a few years back.
And yeah, it does. It looks like, like it was made for it.
Thank you, thank you.
So, I mean, to talk about you, this was your NFTS graduate film.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, how was that working with the NFTS and putting it all together?
yeah. Yeah, it was fun and stressful and because it was my NFTS graduation project, but I always knew because my aunt, who had sort of been a second mum to me my whole life, just before starting the NFTS, she had been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and that's the idea came from there in that moment, sort of around that time, and so I knew in many ways that I wanted to do this for my grad film. So I had kind of been writing it intermittently, like throughout the 2 years that I was there, so that by the time it got to grad, I was like, great, here's the script. Um, and so I like the writing process in that sense, or the development of it in that sense, was quite straightforward because I feel like I think a lot of people get around grad time and then have to start thinking about what they want to do for grads. But I think in my case, I sort of had the time to sort of develop that. Um, and then yeah, it was pretty much just go from there. Um, I remember the first development session we had at the NFTS with like the very other tutors. Um, and I remember that Angeli was one of the tutors was just like, yeah, great, go make it. um, so it was, yeah, I think they just supported it from the very beginning to the end. They knew where the story came from as well. I think everyone in the team did as well. Like various members of the crew and the team had also lost someone close to them um, to the same sort of illness, and so it kind of felt like this passion project of everyone coming together to kind of honor honor the people that
Yeah.
we had lost. Um, and yet it was so fun and so full of joy and laughter that I think it just created a really special atmosphere.
Yeah. And I mean, you're having some incredible success so far. So BAFTA long list.
Whew, yeah,
How does that
that
feel?
incredible, incredible. I have no words. Yeah, it was a lot of tears, a lot of champagne. Um,
Absolutely.
just yeah, I think you always hope that what you create will be embraced, but obviously you never really know.
Yeah.
Um, and I think because this felt so vulnerable and honest for me, it probably like one of the most honest pieces of work I've ever made. There was this huge fear that came with that. Even at the showcase, at the NFTS graduate showcase, I was just sat there terrified. But then you just hear the audience reaction, and like honestly, I can't describe what that feeling is like. And then going around at various festivals with it, Aesthetica Encounters leads, and again hearing the audience's reaction to it and seeing it in real time has just been like, yeah, incredible.
Have there been any parts that people have laughed at or reacted to that have surprised you?
Um, yeah, the one bit that has happened a few times now is when she says, "Do you think I could go in and stay under?" And Mido says, "Yeah, but I think you'll be drowning." Um, that I never wrote that as for it like intending it to be a punchline. And yet for some reason a lot of people like laugh to it. And I think because at that point everyone is sort of kind of accepted, I think, I want to say tone. They're sort of given permission to laugh. I think from the
Oh,
very beginning of the film, we give the audience permission to laugh at moments that they probably aren't used to being given permission to laugh at. And so it's funny how that has then transpired. And so that moment comes along where she's looking into the pool, and you know, it's meant to be quite a dark moment, and he says that line and they laugh, and so yeah, I mean, I'll take it.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, it speaks to the dark comedy of it all as well.
yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah,
So, I mean, what are you working on now? What's next?
a few things just developing. I mean, ideally, the dream would be to do a feature,
Okay.
um, and so just sort of at treatment stage, developing a few things here and there. So we'll see what comes of it.
Well, I mean, massive congratulations on the film, and obviously good luck with the BAFTAs.
Thank
Nominations are coming up.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, thank
And
you so much.
thank you, honestly. Thank you guys. Well, you did. I think director's notes feature Jellyfish and Lobster, but it was part of the NFTS
Yeah,
graduate.
so as part of the top 10 films to watch from the NFTS graduate films.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
nice.
we do a lot of sort of festival focused pieces where we'll
Okay,
go in and watch a lot of the shorts and then just write about our favorites. So yeah, yours was on there. And then Marbell, the editor, he does a lot of the programming for Aesthetica.
okay.
So he saw it and programmed for it for Aesthetica. So yeah, it was a real joy to see it come in through submissions.
That's yeah. I mean, so thank you so much for being like supporters of the project from the very beginning.